Welcome to The Explainer! So today, we're doing something a little different. We are literally dissecting the mechanics of pure, unadulterated fear. You know, when we talk about horror storytelling, your mind probably jumps straight to Hollywood scriptwriters, right? Pitching fictional monsters in some boardroom. But, actually, scratch that. The most effective, truly terrifying narratives, they usually come straight from reality. So we're going to look at 3 wildly harrowing, real-life accounts from long-haul truckers driving through the dead of night. By picking apart these first-hand experiences, we'll uncover exactly what makes a horror story tick, and honestly, why the reality of the open highway is way more terrifying than any movie you've ever seen.
Now, one of the truckers we'll be looking at today kind of hit the nail on the head. He said make peace with whatever demons might be lurking in your subconscious because they'll definitely eat at your brain in the lonely hours. And wow, right? In horror storytelling, atmosphere is literally everything. Think about it. The cab of a semi-truck barreling down the road at 3 in the morning through miles and miles of absolutely nothing. It's the ultimate atmospheric setup. It's pitch dark, it's incredibly isolating, and your mind is already primed to play tricks on you. The stage is just perfectly set for psychological horror to take root.
Okay, let's dive into this with our first core rule of horror storytelling: isolation breeds terror. To truly scare an audience, or, well, in these cases, a victim, you've got to completely strip away the safety net of civilization. I mean, no cell service, no passing cars, 0 streetlights. When you are truly isolated like that, every single tiny anomaly becomes this massive looming threat, simply because you are entirely on your own.
Which brings us right to case study number 1, Mojave, the Isolated Trap.
So the year is 2017. A veteran trucker, we're talking 15 years of experience here, is making an overnight haul straight through the Mojave Desert. It is pitch black out there. His headlights, unreliably dim. Out in that sprawling emptiness, he rolls up on a setup that is just an absolute masterclass in suspense. He's straining his eyes in the dark, and suddenly, boom, he has to slam on his brakes. Right in the dead center of the highway, straddling the double yellow line, is a brand new-looking red Ford Fusion. The passenger door is wide open. It's completely silent outside. No wind, nothing. Just the faint, rhythmic click of the car's hazard lights. Now, in horror storytelling, we call this the unnatural anomaly. It's this uncanny, bizarre situation that begs a question the protagonist just cannot ignore. So, against his better judgment, he gets out to investigate.
And what he finds is an empty car. The keys are still right there in the ignition. He checks the trunk, but it's jammed shut. Driven by this intense, almost agonizing curiosity, he actually climbs through the back seat, forces the trunk open from the inside, and finds 3 squishy garbage bags tied up with a rope. He later reported, "I must have been within 5 inches from one of the bags when the loudest gunshot I've ever heard rang out into the night." The tension that had been slowly building over those last few minutes, it instantly snaps. He drops everything and bolts for his truck.
And this brilliantly illustrates an absolutely vital storytelling technique: the horror of the unexplained. Because as the trucker frantically gets his engine started, he finally sees the threat standing by the car trunk. It's a husky man with red hair, wearing overalls and shin-high boots. In his left hand, a small shovel. In his right hand, an old hunting rifle. The wild part is, the guy doesn't even look crazy. He just looks worried. He drops the shovel, yells "wait," and then literally sprints back to his own car, chasing the semi-truck down the highway, trying to ram him for 15 terrifying minutes until police lights finally show up in the distance and the Ford veers off into the desert. We never learn what was in those squishy bags. We never find out why a man with a small shovel and a rifle was out there. And leaving those questions unanswered, that amplifies the terror 100-fold.
And that brings us to our second pillar of horror storytelling. Rule number 2, nowhere is truly safe. True horror relies heavily on subverting our expectations of sanctuary. A protagonist needs a place where they feel completely secure, just so the storyteller can totally violate that space. When that safety net is breached, the psychological impact is absolutely devastating.
Let's move to our second case study, Ohio, the Invaded Sanctuary.
Let's see how this builds. We've got a rookie driver, only 3 months on the job, attempting a grueling 12-hour overnight haul from New Jersey to Indiana. He's desperate for caffeine, so he reluctantly pulls his semi into what looks like an abandoned gas station with this repurposed convenience store. Now, watch how the dread escalates here. Step 1, he enters the pitch-black store, spots a faint glow, and opens a back door to find a plugged-in refrigerator, but the shelves are totally gutted, nothing inside. Step 2, as he closes the door, he hears a distinct, heavy clatter hit the floor out in the dark main room. He immediately flees, buys his drink at another shop up the road, and gets back into the sanctuary of his truck cab to merge onto the highway. But here is the third, and honestly most horrifying step. As the caffeine finally kicks in, he glances in his rearview mirror and sees his sleeper curtain billowing, just moving on its own. The air conditioning is off. The horror has migrated from that creepy, abandoned store directly into his one and only safe space.
Can you even imagine that realization? You are barreling down a dark highway. There is literally someone inside the tiny enclosed space right behind your head, and you are completely unarmed. The trucker discreetly punches in the nearest police station on his phone and endures what he later described as the most horrifying 20 minutes of his life. Every single second, he's just sweating, waiting for a hand to reach out from the curtain and grab him, or worse, grab the steering wheel and crash the whole rig.
When he finally pulls up to the police station and jumps out, officers swarm the truck and open up the cab, and what they pull out is chilling. Not one, but 3 people, 2 men and a woman, all dressed in rags and nasty blankets. One of the men is actually armed with 2 switchblades. And the most terrifying detail in all of this? As they're being cuffed, they refuse to speak a single word. They're just glaring menacingly at the driver. The invasion of a tight, highly personal space like a truck cab, that triggers this intense claustrophobic dread. It's the ultimate violation of sanctuary.
Which leads us right into the third and, frankly, the most disturbing rule of horror storytelling: empathy is a vulnerability. The most sinister kind of horror doesn't just attack you physically. It actively weaponizes your very humanity. It uses your natural, compassionate instinct to help someone else as the literal bait to lure you into a trap.
Let's look at our final case study for today: Montana weaponizing human empathy.
So, we're riding with Kevin. He's a veteran trucker pushing himself through the night to make an efficient run from North Dakota straight into the remote, pitch-black woods of Montana. Past midnight, his exhaustion is so severe, he's literally relying on sniffing smelling salts just to stay awake. As his truck slows down while he's looking for a place to pull over, his headlights sweep the road and illuminate something utterly bizarre: a purple dress, a pair of shoes, and a bit further up, a pile of children's clothing. This highly unnatural placement of such vulnerable items forces the exhausted driver to stop and get out. I mean, you kinda have to, right? But the moment his boots hit the pavement, he hears a crunching sound in the woods to his left. Then, another crunch to his right. He instantly sprints for the truck. And just as he reaches the door, this terrifying sound rings out: a child's blood-curdling scream echoing from the dark trees. So the crucial point here is the absolute moral agony the protagonist is suddenly placed in. He is terrified. He knows in his gut that it's a trap, but he hears a child screaming. How do you just drive away from that? Torn between saving his own life and saving a potentially kidnapped kid, he makes a split-second decision. He points his truck's nose toward the woods, flips on the high beams, and blasts light into the tree line to see what is actually waiting in the dark.
And the horrifying reality is instantly exposed in the headlights. There are 3 or 4 people ducking behind the trees, and one of them, they're holding up a massive audio speaker. The child's scream was entirely fake. It was a recording, played through a speaker, designed specifically to prey on a victim's compassion and lure them out into the woods. The second the perpetrators realize they've been spotted, the ambush begins. They start hurling heavy objects from both sides of the road, completely smashing the passenger side window as the trucker slams on the gas and speeds away in absolute utter shock.
Moving on to surviving the night shift. As we wrap up this explainer, we really have to look at what ties all 3 of these harrowing case studies together. Whether it's the Mojave Desert, some abandoned Ohio convenience store, or the remote woods of Montana, each story perfectly executes the fundamental rules of crafting a scare. They isolate the protagonist, they invade their safe spaces, and they weaponize their empathy.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the comparison between fiction and reality. When we think of horror movies, they usually rely on supernatural entities, ghosts or some unstoppable monster. But real-life horror, it relies on something much more grounded and honestly a lot more insidious. It relies on desperate people, elaborate psychological traps, and the vast, uncaring emptiness of the American highway. The villains here aren't monsters. They're human beings exploiting the darkness. And that brings us to our final thought. The next time you find yourself driving late at night and the streetlights slowly fade away, leaving only the dim beam of your headlights pushing against this endless wall of pitch black, ask yourself this: what else might be waiting out there in the dark stretches of the highway? Until next time, stay safe out on the roads.